So I'm having a chat with Mike Batt. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Jim. Nice to be here.
Yes, and you too. And the reason we're having a little chat is because you've teamed up with Justin Hayward once again for Life in a Northern Town. Tell us a bit about the track.
Well, this, the I'm sure a lot of your listeners and viewers and whatever won't even remember it because I can't remember how many years ago it was, but it's got to be I think it's late 80s,
Hmm.
probably. I don't know. You probably know better than I do, but I remember it coming out by Dream Academy, the song. And I hate always to try and remember. I should remember it off by heart, but it's Nick Laird Clowns or Loud Clad Clown. Nick Laird Clowes, I think,
Okay.
is the way you say it. And that's how it's a double barrel name. That's who wrote it. And apologies, huge apologies to him if he's listening. But with Gilbert somebody, and I'm really, really sorry. I should have done my homework better, but that's who wrote it. And I hate it when people don't credit the songwriters, but at least if I credit them and get their wrong name slightly wrong, I suppose it's easier for me with a name like Bat. You can't get that wrong, really, you know. But anyway, Nick and Gilbert wrote a great song, and it's called Life in a Northern Town, and it's about exactly that. In fact, it focuses on 1963. It wasn't written in 1963. It's a nostalgic look back to that period. So that's it. That's what the song is. Why did we do it? Well, Justin and I made an album in the late 80s
Mm.
called Classic Blue with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. And what we did there was we made a list of all the songs that we loved that we would love for him to sing and me arrange, and I would do backing vocals. And we booked an orchestra at Abbey Road Studio Number One, a big symphony orchestra, and I got set to doing all these songs. And we our rule at the time was let's choose things that no one would dare cover, like Stairway to Heaven and things like that. That everyone would go, oh my God, if we did it anywhere near the original. But we did them very, of course, separately,
Hmm.
differently because it was a symphonic version with no rhythm section, no drums, no guitars, no piano. And so you get lots of space for the voice on the record and lots of space for the orchestra to be heard as well. So it's a really nice combination.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I've just looked up the track as well. It was written by Gilbert Gabriel and Nick Laird Clowes. So we've got their names right for that one.
How do you say this last Laird what cloud?
Laird Clowes. So
Of
Laird
course.
dash
See that
Clowes, C L
I
O
always try to
W E
think
S.
what the consonant is before the end, and there isn't one. So it's clouds.
It is, yeah,
So I'm,
yeah.
yeah,
So there we go.
yeah, and he's quite well known. It's just why it's very well known, in fact. And so why would I not know how? I think I don't know what it is. Call it brain fog.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It happens to the best of us all the time. And this is kind of a double track, double single release. But I hear there might be some more to come. Is that the plan?
Well, when we did the session, we did three songs, which you are allowed to do up to 20 minutes of music by Musicians Union rules, because of course you have to play by the rules. Well, I always have had to. There
Mm.
were days in my younger days when I was about 20 where I'd go into the studio with an orchestra, and I would literally have to, in order to make the budget work, record six songs in 3 hours, which meant that the last song was always no time for rehearsal. Just put the parts out
Hmm.
and take the run through. And that was how fast we used to work in the old days. But to answer your question, yeah, that we did three songs. This is the first one that's come out. It wasn't the one we thought would be the A side, the sort of the leading single. But so there's one other that was the lead suspect to start with that I'm afraid I can't reveal what it is.
Hmm.
And then there's another one which is more personal to Justin, which may never come out, or it may come out as well. But we may do some more together. Who knows? If the opportunity arises, I think because obviously it's quite expensive recording with the whole of the London Philharmonic. There's not just the orchestra, it's the hall and the outside broadcast unit and everything. So we would need a record company to climb aboard and say, "Hey guys, love what happened to that first record.
Mm.
Let's do another one."
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. And it's not the first time you've worked with Justin either. As you mentioned, you worked with him about 40 years ago. What made you get back together to start kind of releasing more new music together?
I think it was because we've just been friends all this time,
Yeah.
and we're part of a thing called the Sods, which don't switch off your radios or computers, everybody. It's Society of Distinguished Songwriters, and we were just nattering one day, and we keep in touch anyway because we always, we've seen our families grow up, that sort of thing.
Mm.
We met through Sods, and when we were in our 30s, and which was probably in the 30s, but no, it was like 30 years ago. Um, anyway, so we met, and that's how we first started to do this first album. What should we do? Let's do an album together. Now it was just like, hmm, why don't we do something else? And in the end, we just went in and did it. We didn't wait for a record company.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. And Des mentioned you're a songwriter, but you've done loads of stuff like production as well. But you've written for other artists, musicals, soundtracks as well. And I'd like to talk about the songwriting. So, for you, how do tracks normally start off?
Whoa. Well, the answer is there isn't a normally, really. Um, Oh, Sammy Khan had a great answer for that. Well, when they say what comes first, the lyrics or the music, slightly different question.
Hmm.
What comes first, the lyrics or the music? And he said, the phone call. Uh, in a way, it's the same answer because it's the incentive to write is the opportunity to have it heard.
Hmm.
Writing in a vacuum is difficult or more difficult. That's why I admire people who are starting out and they're just setting up writing a collection of songs. They've usually got a band of their own that they're playing it,
Hmm.
writing for, so there is an incentive. But sitting on your own in a room just writing songs, hoping that one day someone will take notice is not the best mental driver for writing. So what I find is that, well, it's easy with a film. Well, relatively easier with a film because they tell you what they want it to be about, So with with Bright Eyes, they I was being asked to write. It was going to be several songs, but in the end, one song because the producer didn't really want it to turn out sort of Disney schmizny, smoozy, sweet music movie, which it certainly didn't. In fact, I think it's quite a brutal film. But Bright Eyes was about death. He said, "I want you to write a song about death." So I was being instructed by or requested by a director to write a song about death.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh, wow, this is so hard. So I went home and I ruminated for a couple of days. And I didn't go straight to the piano. I thought about it and suddenly thought, actually, this is the most important thing we all think about. What happens when you die, So I wrote the song about life, really, Bright Eyes.
Hmm.
And when you die, of course, the brightness goes away. And I'd never experienced that with anyone that I knew. But like years later, when my dad died, it was exactly that. When I saw him afterwards, um, I arrived before it happened, and his eyes were sort of dead. Forgive me saying so, but there was no brightness there, no sparkle, and that's why I wrote Bright Eyes. And I've gone off at a tangent telling you all about Bright Eyes, but you asked what is the process? There isn't one. I mean, in that particular case, the quote best scenario did occur, which was I sat down at the piano with the whole idea of what I wanted to write about, but no idea of what it was going to be called or the lyrics I would use or the tune I would create. And my hands just rested on this thing while I sang, "Is it a kind of dream?" And dream. I happened to be sitting at the piano. And I just thought, oh, that's interesting. Is it kind of rolling out, floating out, you know, and all that, and then I just came up with bright eyes, burning like fire, and that just happened because in the same way I hadn't then read, but I later read an interview with Paul Simon, who
Mhm.
said his best songs come when he's sitting there with his guitar on his knee and he thinks of the lyrics and then thinks of a little tune to go with it. For example, Bridge Over Troubled Water, he'd be just sitting there and going, like a bridge over troubled water. Oh, that's good. I'll write that down. So, or he might have had a tape going. I scribble on manuscript paper when I'm writing. A bit old-fashioned like that. But I find it quicker. Then I can cross out and say I don't like it. Whereas if you've got a tape running, you've got to go back and spool through it and find the good
Mhm.
bits. And um, so that's how I ideally do it. But there are lots and lots of different ways people work, of course, differently. If I was solely a lyricist, uh, I would personally prefer to write the lyrics first, in the way Bernie Taupin does for Elton, because you've got complete freedom.
Mm.
Whereas uh, I find it quite hard if someone sends me a tune to write lyrics for it. I do it, I can do it, but I don't prefer to do it because uh, to me a tune has got meaning, and when I'm writing a song, the meaning of the song is already in my head. So that colors the kind of melody I'll write
Yeah.
already without any lyrics. Whereas often, I know Andrew Lloyd Webber sends Tim Rice or Don Black the tunes done, and then they write the meaning into it. And even though they're brilliant, I'm thinking, but how did Andrew know that that would come out like that? I mean,
Yeah.
he actually sent me of course, we worked together. We talked about working together quite a lot, but we only worked together the once, which was on the song Phantom of the Opera. And he had a tune from, I think it was left over from something else, actually, a different musical. And he gave me a piano version of it. And I went home and wrote, The Phantom of the Opera is here, and so on over it. So it can be done. It's just not the way I prefer.
Mm. Yeah. Are you someone who quite likes restraints and kind of direction of where other artists want you to go, or do you want the freedom to do your own thing?
Again, it's both. I enjoy both. It's like saying, do you like sausages and mash or fish and chips? You know, I love them both. Um, so um, let me see. I do love the constraint and therefore the opportunity, which is a kind of freeing thing. The constraint is of someone telling you, I would like a song about this. So, and it usually happens when a film director is asking you, because that frees you from the decision of having, in a way, rather than yes, it pins you down to what you've exactly got to do, but it frees you from the agony of what am I going to write about. So in a way, it's restricting and freeing at the same time. So that's good. I also sometimes do that to myself. I was asked by the Hollies in 1980, before any of you guys were born, um, to write three songs for them. It was before I left up to go away on my boat, which I went away for 2 years on a boat around the world, which everyone can read about if they buy my book, which is called The Closest Thing to Crazy. Ta-da! Um, and Anyway, so the last thing I did before I left in 1980 was to sit at the piano and think, wow, I've got to write these songs, and I haven't got long to write them. So I thought to myself, I'll pretend I'm a film director. So I had this little conversation. I had a word with myself, and I said, right, you know, I'm the film director, and I'm saying we're going to do this film about the Battle of Waterloo or some such, you know, costume drama battle. And uh, there's a story about his young lieutenant going out to join his brigade. He's never been to battle before, and he meets this lady. So I came up with this story, and I just wrote "Soldier's Song," which I'm I still perform in concert to this day. I don't do many concerts. I'd quite like to do more. If there's any promoters listening, uh, give us a call. And but I probably will do a few more. But anyway, the thing is, I did that with a big orchestra again, funnily enough. And Alan, the only person on the record that's actually, well, actually two. Alan Clark's vocal goes with the symphony orchestra, which is the London Symphony Orchestra, I think. And Tony Clark does a fantastic guitar solo on it as well. So that's how that record came together. But it is every different which way. I love also the freedom of just thinking, what shall I write? I'm thinking of doing a solo album soon. And but I can't help myself thinking, I thought I'll write 10. I'll break the habit because I always trying to think of a concept. Like I wrote an album called Tarot Suite, which was all about the tarot cards. Not because I'm in that into them. Um, I fiddled about with learning to read them a little bit. And in the old days when I was younger and I was more into sort of mystiques and not actually into the occult, but I like the artwork, frankly,
Mm.
on tarot cards. So I wrote a whole album called Tarot Suite, and it did really well in places like, well, not places like Germany, but Germany was one of the biggest territories, Australia, South Africa, pretty much everywhere except the UK, because the UK, the Wombles chasing me. The shadow of the Wombles was running after me, and frankly, it caught me up, and it's never really gone away.
Yeah, I can
So I
well
never
imagine.
became a,
Yeah, go
sorry,
on.
I never
No, go on.
became a pop star or a rock star in England. I had one quite bubblegummy hit called Summertime City, which was big, but I didn't follow it up by going because I didn't want to carry on doing that kind of music. Nothing wrong with it. I just didn't want to be that particular
Yeah.
person, you know.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. No, no, good. No, it's all good. I mean, you touched on the Wombles now. One question I wanted to ask is how did you create the Wombles? Because it's not a normal act, it's a novelty act. So what made you create the Wombles, the music group, in the first place?
Well, I'd started in the business when I was 17, 18, just after A levels. And I'd got signed by Liberty Records, which was fantastic. They'd become United Artists Records, and I became their head of A&R when I was
Mm.
19, which was stupid of them to appoint me. I mean, why would you do, I had no experience. I didn't even really know what a lease tape deal was or anything like that. But I learned very quickly. I didn't stay there long. That's the only proper job I've actually had. I was there for a year and a half.
Mhm.
And then I left because I wanted to spend more time te teaching myself arranging and conducting and all that kind of stuff. Just as I'd taught myself to play the piano, and I had done quite a few string arrangements by that time, but I wanted to expand my orchestral knowledge and so on. And I made my living by doing jingles, and it wasn't bad actually. I had this. I wasn't by any means wealthy. I mean, I was living in a little flat in Earl's Court, where the water would drip down the light switch, the light bulb, and drip off, and we put a bucket underneath it and phone the landlord in the morning. So I'm not pleading poverty, but it certainly wasn't wealth. Um, but anyway, how I made my money was by doing jingles, and this lady rang me up, who was my agent. Excuse me, she was my agent for doing jingles, and she said that there's this thing called the Wombles they're making for the BBC, and would you like to go and talk to them? So I did, and saw them making this stop frame animation thing. The puppets like 8 inches high, um, and it was already in production. Excuse me. It was already in production, and I said to them, look, why don't I try writing a song instead of a tune? Because
Mm.
a song would give it more flavor and color, and little kids would then know what the Wombles were, without even seeing the TV series. So they said, "Oh, that sounds like an idea. Try that." So I did. I went back. I lived on a houseboat at the time in West Byfleet, And I went back and sat at my little piano on the houseboat, and I wrote this. I came up with da, 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 a bit like that Paul Simon story. Came up with it. The words fell out of my mouth at the same time as the tune. Da, 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 oh, underground, overground, and that was what I mean. They liked, and when they said to me, "Well, we're thinking what sort of fee you might like." I don't know how I had this conversation because I had an agent who should have been having it really.
Yeah.
He said, "What do you think? 200 quid?" Which in those days was like 2,000 quid, because it's back in 1980, no, 1971 or two when because one was came out in 74 and 5. So it'd be about 1970. I think it was 72 when I wrote the song. And I said, you know what? And I couldn't afford to say this, but I said it anyway. I said, instead of giving me the two, because frankly, the position at the bank wasn't great. And I had these sort of embarrassing meetings with a very, very tolerant and lovely bank manager. I remember his name. He was called Charlie. And, I could imagine the embarrassing meeting with Charlie next time. He said, what? You didn't take the fee? You could have paid off your overdraft. Anyway, I said, look, don't pay me 200 quid. Just give me the rights to the characters for musical purposes. None of us knew I was going to make a band out of it. We just thought I was going to make a record and put it out. And then I made the record myself. And in those days, if when you made a record, if you wanted an extra, say, two violins in your string section, it meant you couldn't have a washing machine that month. It was like that. And I carried it around various record companies, and no one was that interested. Then the thing came out on telly, and there I was with my Womble record, and I went to CBS Records with it, sort of last call before I jump off the end of the pier type of thing. And he said, "Oh, let me just play it to my kid at home and and I'll let you know tomorrow." It was Dan Loggins, who was the brother of a well-known American singer called Kenny Loggins.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, so he rang me the next day. He said, "My kid loves it, so you've got a deal." And I got 500 quid for it, which was more than I paid to make it. Just
Brilliant.
about a little bit more than I paid to make it.
And it's still
And then,
going to
and then
this
of course,
day. So
yeah. Well, I mean, the funnier story, which I don't want to overstay my welcome here, but the funnier story is that I couldn't get in to see the marketing man, who was very ultra cool, mate of John Peel. All that. I was just the bloke that wrote this Womble song and brought it in and got 500 quid for it. So I couldn't get in to see him at all. And so I rang my mum, who had always been fantastic at making fancy dress outfits and whatever when we were kids. And I said, Mum, could you make me a Womble costume? To which she said, what's a Womble costume? I described it and sent her a little picture. And only a few days later, she'd run me up with the first ever Womble costume. And I put it on. I went to the offices. I didn't know who I was going to go and see, but I didn't go and see the marketing bloke. I saw this sign to senior management, which is on the top floor. So I went up and I went up to the secretary of the managing director. His name was Dick Asher. And I said, is Mr. Asher in? Wearing the Womble costume. And she was like, I don't know what she thought. She must have thought maybe the best she might have thought was maybe it was one of his bosses from America playing a joke on him or something. Anyway, he came out of his office and was like laughing and really enjoying it. And we got everyone in from the whole company. We had photographs taken, and suddenly they had an artist. That's what I'd figured out that they need an artist so they can say, I worked with that artist. I had lunch with that artist. Not that I ever had lunch with any of them wearing the costume, but that's how we got them off the ground.
awesome. Fantastic. Mike, it's been a pleasure having a chat with you.
You too. And, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to mention it to all your listeners and stuff. So thank you very much for the chat. I've really enjoyed it.